Marcus stood alone in the grand hall of the dragon sanctum. The marble floor was cold beneath his feet, and the walls towered above him like the ribs of some ancient beast. He was a human, small, fragile, and completely out of place among the dragons of Sakarath Prime. The council of elder dragons circled high above him in the vast chamber. Their wings beat slowly, creating winds that made Marcus's clothes flap against his body. The largest of them all was Thorin, a dragon so old that his scales had turned silver with age. His eyes were like two moons watching everything. Beside him flew Helena, whose emerald scales caught the light like jewels. There was also Vorn, a scarred dragon with one eye missing from an ancient battle, and Kasara, whose voice could shake the ground when she spoke. A human, Thorin's voice boomed through the hall, echoing off the stone. They have truly given us a human to lead the dragon collective. Marcus had lived with the dragons since he was a small child. His parents had died in the Cataclysm Wars, a terrible conflict that had destroyed entire cities. A young dragon named Elena had found him crying alone in the ruins and brought him to the sanctum. The dragons had raised him, taught him their language, shown him their ways. He had grown up among them, learning their customs and their codes of honor. He had studied their history, their philosophy, their way of seeing the world. But none of that mattered now. In the eyes of these ancient beings, Marcus would always be something less. Something other. A human who would live perhaps 80 or 90 years if he was lucky, while they lived for thousands. How could a creature with such a short lifespan possibly lead dragons who had seen empires rise and fall? This is madness, growled Vorn, the scarred dragon. The High Council in the capital has lost their minds. A human cannot lead us. We are the most powerful beings in this galaxy. We have conquered worlds. We have built civilizations. And now they want us to bow to a creature that is weaker than a hatchling. The other dragons roared in agreement. Their cries shook the entire building. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. Marcus stood very still, trying not to show his fear. Helena spoke next. Her voice was different from the others, less angry, more thoughtful. Perhaps we should listen to why the council made this choice. Perhaps there is wisdom in it that we do not yet understand. She looked down at Marcus with something that might have been kindness in her ancient eyes. But then she turned away, and her wings folded against her body. Even she could not help him. Even she could not change what was happening. The decision has been made, declared Kasara, whose voice was as sharp as broken glass. We will not argue about it. But we will test this human. If he is truly worthy of leading us, he will prove it. If he fails, he will die. The other dragons agreed with this judgment. Marcus felt his stomach turn to ice. That night, Marcus was taken to a small stone chamber high in the tower. It was a simple room with a bed, a table, and a single window that looked out over the mountains of Sakarath Prime. The landscape was beautiful, purple hills stretching to the horizon and in the far distance the black peaks of the Obsidian Mountains. But Marcus could not enjoy the view. His mind was too full of fear. An elderly dragon named Terence brought him food and water. Terence had always been kind to Marcus, ever since he was a boy. The old dragon set the tray down carefully and looked at the young man with sad eyes. I am sorry, Marcus, Terence said quietly. They gave you an impossible task. I heard them speaking in the council chambers after you left. They did not choose you because they believed in you. They chose you because they wanted to prove that a human could never lead dragons. They wanted to prove that the High Council in the capital made a mistake. What task? Marcus asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Terence sighed, a long breath that seemed to come from the depths of his ancient heart. They want you to go to the Obsidian Peaks. There, in a fortress carved into the mountain, lives Corthazix. He is the greatest dragon who has ever lived. He is also the most dangerous. For 3,000 years, he has been imprisoned there because he nearly destroyed an entire colony world. No dragon has ever been able to command him. No dragon has ever even gotten close without being burned to ash. Marcus felt his legs go weak. He sat down on the bed. If you can tame Corthazix, Terence continued, if you can make him accept your leadership, then the council will have no choice but to accept you as the leader of the dragon collective. But if you fail, Marcus, they will execute you. They will say that you were not worthy, that humans can never lead dragons, and they will put one of themselves in charge instead. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. Because you deserve to know the truth, Terence said. He placed one massive claw gently on Marcus's shoulder. And because I want you to understand what you are facing. Corthazix is not just powerful, Marcus. He is broken. He is angry. He has suffered more than any dragon should ever suffer. Most who have tried to approach him have died screaming. After Terence left, Marcus sat alone in the darkness. He thought about his life. He thought about being an orphan, about losing everything in the wars. He thought about how the dragons had taken him in, how they had become his family. He thought about Elena, who had saved him all those years ago. He thought about Helena, whose kindness had given him hope when he had none. He looked out at the black peaks in the distance, barely visible in the moonlight. Somewhere in those mountains Corthazix waited. Somewhere in those peaks, Marcus would find either his destiny or his death. He stood up, made a decision, and began to prepare for the journey ahead. Marcus left the Dragon Sanctum before dawn broke over Sakarath Prime. He carried with him only a small pack of food, a water bottle, and a worn map that showed the path to the Obsidian Peaks. The other dragons watched him go from the high windows, but none of them came to say goodbye. They did not believe he would survive. Most of them hoped he would not. The journey to the mountains took 3 days of hard walking. The land around Sakarath Prime was wild and beautiful, filled with strange plants and creatures that Marcus had never seen before. Purple forests gave way to golden plains, and the sky above shifted between shades of green and blue as the twin suns moved across it. But Marcus barely noticed any of this. His mind was focused on one thing only: what awaited him at the end of this journey. On the first night, Marcus made a small fire and sat beside it, eating bread and dried meat. He thought about turning back. He could go to the spaceport, catch a ship, and leave this planet forever. No one could stop him. He could escape the test, escape the danger, escape the possibility of death. But he thought of Elena, who had saved him when he was nothing but a lost child. He thought of Helena, whose gentle eyes held a spark of hope that he might actually succeed. He thought of all the dragons who had raised him, who had given him a life when he had nothing. He could not abandon them. On the second day, Marcus climbed into the foothills of the Obsidian Peaks. The air became cooler and the vegetation changed. Strange black rocks jutted out from the ground like broken teeth. The sky turned darker, filled with clouds that seemed to gather above the mountains as if drawn by some invisible force. Marcus could feel something in the air, a presence, a power, something ancient and angry that made his skin prickle with warning. He passed the ruins of an old settlement. Buildings were burned black as if fire had consumed them long ago. Bones lay scattered in the streets. Marcus realized he was looking at the remnants of a dragon attack. This was what Corthazix had done. This was the destruction he was capable of. The fear that Marcus had been holding back began to rise in his chest like a tide. His hands started to shake. His breathing became shallow and quick. He sat down on a broken stone wall and forced himself to think clearly. "You are terrified," he said to himself out loud. "You are about to meet a creature that could kill you with a single breath. You have no weapons. You have no magic. You have nothing that could possibly protect you. And yet, you are going to walk into that mountain anyway. Because this is what you have to do." By the end of the second day, Marcus reached the base of the tallest peak. The mountain was enormous, rising so high that its peak disappeared into the clouds. The fortress carved into its side was vast and ancient, made from the same black stone as the surrounding rock. Great doors, each as tall as 10 men, stood closed before him. Symbols were carved into the metal, symbols that Marcus recognized as dragon writing. They said only one word: beware. Marcus climbed the path that led to the fortress. Every step took him higher, farther from safety, deeper into danger. The wind grew stronger as he climbed, pulling at his clothes, trying to knock him off the narrow path. Below him, the world fell away into mist and shadow. When he reached the great doors, Marcus stood for a long time, unable to move. His hand reached out and touched the cold metal. He could feel something beyond it, a massive presence, a consciousness as big as the mountain itself. He could feel Corthazix waiting. Marcus took a deep breath and pushed. The great doors swung open without a sound, as if they had been waiting for him. The fortress was dark inside, lit only by the red light that filtered through openings in the ceiling far above. The chamber was enormous, carved from solid stone. The floor was smooth and polished from thousands of years of footsteps. And there, in the center of this vast space, lay Corthazix. Marcus's mind could barely comprehend what he was seeing. The dragon was impossibly huge. His body was as long as a castle, his wings folded against his sides like mountains of black scales. His head alone was bigger than a house. His eyes were closed, but when he heard Marcus enter, they opened slowly, like the rising of two dark suns. Those eyes found Marcus and stopped on him. "So," a voice like grinding boulders filled the chamber, "they send me a toy. A tiny, fragile, worthless human. They send me a child." The dragon's laugh echoed through the fortress, and pieces of stone fell from the ceiling. Marcus stood completely still. He could not run. He could not hide. There was nowhere to go. Corthazix lifted his massive head and looked down at the small human figure standing far below him. His jaw opened and Marcus could see rows of teeth as long as spears. Fire flickered in the depths of that huge mouth. "I am going to kill you," Corthazix said simply. "And it will be the most entertaining thing that has happened to me in 500 years. The dragon took one enormous step forward. The ground shook beneath Marcus's feet. Dust rose from the floor like a storm. The great beast's claws, each one as big as a man's body, extended from his feet and clicked against the stone floor. Marcus opened his mouth. His voice was small and shaking, but he forced out the words. "I did not come here to fight you," he said. "I came here because I know what it feels like to be alone." For just a moment, Corthazix hesitated. His massive head tilted slightly, as if he was confused by what he had heard. And in that moment of hesitation, something changed. The great dragon froze, his massive claws still extended, his jaws still open. For a long moment, nothing moved. Even the dust seemed to pause in the air, suspended between earth and sky. "What did you say?" Corthazix's voice was different now, not angry but confused. The fire in his mouth flickered and died. Marcus took a step forward. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, to hide, to do anything but move closer to this creature of death. But he forced himself to continue walking toward the dragon's enormous head. "I said I know what it feels like to be alone," Marcus repeated, his voice steadier now. "I came here because I understand you." Corthazix pulled back slightly, his head rising higher, his eyes narrowing as he studied this tiny human. "Understand me? You understand nothing, little creature. You are food. You are a toy. You are less than an insect to me." But he did not attack. Something in what Marcus had said had stopped him. Marcus walked closer until he stood directly beneath the dragon's massive head. If Corthazix chose to strike now, Marcus would die instantly. There was nothing he could do to prevent it. But he did not flinch. He did not look away. "When I was 5 years old, my parents died," Marcus began, speaking quietly but clearly. "They died in the Cataclysm Wars. I did not understand why. I did not understand that the war was not their fault, that they had done nothing wrong. I only knew that they were gone and I was alone. I thought it was my fault somehow. I thought I had done something bad and that was why they left me." Corthazix's eyes remained fixed on Marcus, but the dragon said nothing. His breathing slowed. His massive body settled lower to the ground as if he was settling in to listen. Marcus continued his story. "I was angry for so long. I was angry at the world. I was angry at the other children who still had their parents. I was angry at myself for surviving when they did not. That anger made me want to hurt people. It made me want to destroy things just like the wars had destroyed my family. I wanted everyone else to feel as broken as I felt." A low rumble came from Corthazix's chest, but it was not a growl of aggression. It was something else, something that might have been recognition. Marcus sat down on the floor right beneath the dragon's head. He was exhausted from the journey, and his fear was draining away, replaced by something deeper, a need to make this creature understand. "I lived with the dragons after I was orphaned," Marcus went on. "They gave me a home. They gave me a family. But I was still lonely. I was still different. I was still the weak one, the small one, the human. Every day I wondered if I really belonged there. Every day I feared they would realize they had made a mistake, that they would throw me out." Corthazix lowered his massive head even closer to Marcus. The dragon's breathing was slow and heavy, and Marcus could feel the warmth of his breath on his skin. "You think you are the only one who has suffered," Corthazix said, his voice now quiet, almost sad. "You think you are the only one who has been broken." "No," Marcus said. "I think you have suffered far more than I ever could. I think you have been broken in ways that I cannot even imagine." The dragon was silent for a long time. Then, slowly he began to speak. He told Marcus about his life, about the battles he had fought thousands of years ago, about the other dragons he had called brothers who had betrayed him. He told about the wars he had seen, the civilizations he had watched rise and fall, the friends he had watched die while he continued to live. "I was the strongest," Corthazix said, pain clear in his ancient voice. "I was the most powerful dragon who had ever lived. But strength could not save the ones I loved. Strength could not stop the wars. Strength could not make the loneliness go away. So I became angry instead. I became destruction instead. If I could not protect what I loved, then I would destroy everything so that no one else would have to feel this pain." As the dragon spoke, Marcus began to understand. Corthazix was not evil. He was wounded. His anger was not cruelty, it was grief. His violence was not nature. It was a response to suffering so great that it had twisted him over the centuries. "That fortress is your prison," Marcus said quietly. "But the real prison is inside you. The real prison is the pain that you have been carrying for thousands of years." Corthazix's massive body shook. At first, Marcus thought the dragon was going to become angry again. But then he realized what was happening. The great dragon was weeping. Enormous tears fell from his eyes, each one as big as a human head, splashing onto the stone floor with tremendous force. For hours, Marcus sat beneath the dragon's head while Corthazix wept. The dragon released pain that had been building for millennia, grief for lost loved ones, rage at injustice, despair at his own isolation. Marcus did not speak. He simply sat and listened. He simply was there, bearing witness to the suffering of this ancient, powerful, broken creature. When the tears finally stopped, Corthazix looked down at Marcus with eyes that were different now. The fire was gone from them. In its place was something gentler, understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of healing. "I thought I was the only one," the dragon said softly. Marcus reached up and placed his small hand on the dragon's enormous face. The scales were warm beneath his palm. "You were not alone," Marcus said. "Neither was I. And we are not alone now." Something changed in that moment between the human and the dragon. A connection formed that was stronger than strength, deeper than power. It was the bond that forms between two broken souls who finally find someone who understands their pain. The weeks that followed transformed both Marcus and Corthazix in ways that neither of them could have predicted. What had begun as a test of dominance became something far more profound, a journey of healing that neither creature had thought possible. Marcus established a routine within the fortress. Each morning he would wake in a small chamber that Corthazix had cleared for him, and he would go to tend to the dragon's wounds. Many of these wounds were physical. Corthazix bore scars from ancient battles. Some were so old that they had become part of his body, twisted and permanent. Others were fresher, from when the dragon had thrown himself against the fortress walls in fits of rage, trying to escape his own prison. Marcus carefully cleaned these wounds with water and cloth. He found herbs in the mountains that the old dragon said had healing properties, and he made poultices that he spread gently over the dragon's scales. Corthazix would lie still during these treatments, patient in a way that would have been impossible for him just weeks before. But the physical wounds were not the deepest ones. The deepest wounds were in Corthazix's mind and spirit. Every evening Marcus would sit beside the dragon's enormous head, and Corthazix would tell him stories. The dragon spoke of his youth when the galaxy was still young and full of wonder. He told of the first battles he had fought, when he believed that strength was always good and that victory was everything. He spoke of companions who had been like brothers to him, dragons whose names had been lost to time but whose memory lived on in Corthazix's heart. "There was a dragon named Sarath," Corthazix said one evening, his voice soft with memory. "He was not the strongest of us, but he was the wisest. He told me once that true strength is not about having power over others, but about choosing not to use that power." I did not understand him then. I thought he was weak. Now I understand that he was the strongest of us all. Marcus listened to every word. He heard the longing in the dragon's voice, the regret that came with the passing of ages. He began to understand that Corthazix's anger had been a shield, a way to protect himself from the pain of loss and loneliness. In return, Marcus shared his own stories. He told Corthazix about growing up as an orphan, about the nightmares he had suffered, about the times he had felt so worthless that he wanted to disappear. He told the dragon about the day Elena found him crying in the ruins, about how one act of kindness had changed everything for him. "She did not have to save me," Marcus said. "I was just a small human child worth nothing to her. But she chose to care for me anyway. That one choice gave my life meaning. That one choice taught me that I was worth saving." As the weeks passed, Marcus noticed changes in Corthazix. The constant anger that had burned in the dragon's eyes began to fade. His movements became less aggressive, more controlled. The way he looked at Marcus changed from seeing him as a toy or food to seeing him as something else. A friend, perhaps, or a brother. One morning, Marcus woke to find Corthazix had rearranged the entire fortress. Chambers that had been blocked by collapsed stone were now cleared. A pathway had been created that led to a high balcony overlooking the mountains. The dragon had done all of this work during the night, carefully and deliberately. "I wanted you to see the view," Corthazix explained when Marcus questioned him. "You spend so much time in darkness with me. I thought you should see the light." Marcus climbed to the balcony and looked out over the vast landscape of Sakarath Prime. The purple mountains stretched to the horizon. The twin suns were beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. It was one of the most beautiful things Marcus had ever seen. He turned to look back at Corthazix and he saw something in the dragon's eyes that he had never expected to see: gentleness. Care. Love. One evening as they sat together watching the sunset, Corthazix spoke words that changed everything. "I am ready," the ancient dragon said quietly. "I am ready to leave this place. I am ready to face the world again. But only if you will come with me." Marcus felt his heart skip. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I will accept your leadership," Corthazix said. "Not because you have conquered me or enslaved me. Not because you have proven yourself stronger than me. But because I trust you. Because in these weeks with you, I have learned what it means to be whole again. I have learned that strength is not about power but about the choices we make. I choose to follow you, Marcus. Not as a servant but as a partner." Tears streamed down Marcus's face. He had come to the Obsidian Peaks expecting to die. He had come expecting to fail. Instead, he had found something far more valuable than victory. He had found a true friend. The next morning, Marcus and Corthazix stood together at the entrance to the fortress. The dragon lowered himself so that Marcus could climb onto his back. It was the first time the great beast had allowed this. "Are you afraid?" Corthazix asked as they prepared to descend the mountain. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "But I am ready." "So am I," Corthazix said. "We are ready together." And with that, the dragon spread his massive wings and launched himself into the sky. Marcus clung to the scales on Corthazix's neck, feeling the wind rush past him as they flew down from the mountains. Below them, the world spread out like a map, their future waiting, uncertain but no longer frightening. For the first time in thousands of years, Corthazix was flying not in anger but in hope. And Marcus, the small human orphan who had been given an impossible task, was no longer alone. The sky above the dragon sanctum turned dark as Corthazix descended toward the great fortress. Every dragon in the city stopped what they were doing and looked up. They had not seen Corthazix fly in thousands of years. The greatest and most dangerous dragon alive was returning, and he was carrying a human on his back. The Elder Council rushed to the highest tower to witness this sight. Thorin stood at the front, his ancient eyes wide with shock. Beside him was Helena, and Vorn with his single eye, and Kasara with her sharp voice now silent. Behind them stood dozens of other dragons, their wings folded against their bodies, their attention completely focused on what was happening in the sky. Corthazix landed in the great courtyard below the main entrance to the sanctum. The force of his landing sent dust and pieces of stone flying in all directions. The dragon folded his wings carefully and lowered his massive head to allow Marcus to climb down from his back. Marcus walked slowly into the entrance hall of the sanctum. He was covered in dust from the journey, his clothes were torn, and his face was marked by the hardships of his time in the mountains. But his head was held high and his eyes were clear and steady. The Council of Dragons descended from their tower to meet him. They formed a circle around him, their massive bodies creating a wall of scales and ancient power. Marcus stood in the center, alone, with Corthazix watching from the courtyard entrance. "You return alive," Thorin said, his voice filled with something that might have been surprise or disappointment. "And Corthazix does not burn you to ash. This is unexpected." "I went to the Obsidian Peaks," Marcus said, speaking clearly so that all the dragons could hear. "I met Corthazix. And I learned something that the council did not know." "And what is that?" Helena asked, her gentle voice cutting through the tension. "That Corthazix is not evil," Marcus said. "He is not a weapon to be controlled or feared. He is a being who has suffered for thousands of years. He is lonely just like I am lonely. He is broken just like I am broken. But he is also wise and strong and capable of great compassion." The dragons murmured among themselves. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. But Helena nodded slowly as if something was beginning to make sense to her. "You did not tame him with force," Helena said. "It was not a question." "No," Marcus replied. "I did not tame him at all. I listened to him. I understood him. I showed him that his pain mattered, that his loneliness was real, that he was not alone. And in doing that he chose to trust me. He chose to follow me. Not because I am stronger than him, but because I was willing to see him as more than just a weapon or a monster." Vorn stepped forward, his scarred face twisted in anger. "This is foolishness. The council sent you to prove that humans can lead dragons. Instead, you have returned with stories about friendship and understanding. These things mean nothing. Power is what matters. Strength is what matters. Power without wisdom is destruction," Marcus said calmly. "And strength without compassion is cruelty. If I am to lead the Dragon Collective, I will not lead through force or fear. I will lead through partnership. I will lead by listening to the voices of those who have been silenced. I will lead by understanding, not by domination. Thorin's ancient eyes studied Marcus for a long moment. The old dragon was silent, thinking. Finally he spoke. You say you will lead through partnership. But you are a human. You will live perhaps 80 years more if you are fortunate. We will live for thousands of years. How can you partner with us when you are so temporary? That is my strength, Marcus answered. Because my life is short, I do not take time for granted. Because my life is brief, I understand the value of every moment. I can teach you to see what you have become blind to after so many centuries. And you can teach me your wisdom, your experience, your understanding of the ages. As Marcus spoke, something shifted in the great hall. The dragons began to realize that this young human was not asking them to bow to him. He was asking them to walk beside him. He was asking for a partnership between two different kinds of beings. Helena stepped forward and lowered her head to Marcus. It was a gesture of respect and acceptance. Slowly, one by one, the other dragons did the same. Even Vorn, though he looked angry, eventually lowered his head. Thorin was the last. The oldest dragon in the sanctum looked down at the small human who stood so confidently in the center of the hall. Something that might have been a smile crossed the ancient dragon's face. Very well, Thorin said. Let us try your way, young one. Let us try partnership instead of domination. Let us try understanding instead of fear. That evening, as the sun set over Sakarath Prime, the dragons gathered on the highest tower of the sanctum. Marcus stood beside them, looking out over the city. Corthazix stood at the center of the group, no longer isolated and imprisoned but part of the community. A new flag was raised above the tower. It was a banner showing a dragon and a human standing side by side, neither above the other but equal and united. The symbol of a new age, not the age of dragon rule but the age of partnership. Thank you, Corthazix said quietly to Marcus. You gave me something I thought I had lost forever. What is that? Marcus asked. Hope, the great dragon replied. And more than that, you gave me purpose. You showed me that all these years of pain and anger could be transformed into something beautiful. You showed me that I could be more than my suffering. Marcus reached up and placed his hand on Corthazix's scaled face, just as he had done so many times in the fortress. The dragon who had once been feared as an instrument of destruction was now a symbol of healing and transformation. We gave each other that, Marcus said. Because we were both willing to be broken together, we both became whole. As night fell over the dragon sanctum, the lights of the city twinkled below like stars. In the towers and halls, dragons and humans worked together, planning a future that neither species could have created alone. The age of division had ended. The age of unity had begun, born from the friendship between an orphan human and a broken dragon who learned that the greatest strength was not in power, but in compassion. The story of Marcus and Corthazix spread across the galaxy. It became a legend, a reminder that understanding could bridge any divide, that compassion could heal any wound, and that the most unlikely partnerships could create the greatest transformations. And in the mountains of Sakarath Prime, where once only anger and isolation had lived, there was now peace and belonging. The obsidian peaks no longer held a prison. They held a sanctuary, a place where broken souls came to heal, guided by the wisdom of a dragon and a human who had learned to love each other. Retry.